Grace trusted a stranger, and that choice changed her life forever. A single mom, a crying baby on a plane, and a mysterious man with a gentle smile. It was supposed to be just another ordinary flight, until it wasn't. What seemed like a simple act of kindness would soon reveal a destiny woven with courage, hope, and a love no one saw coming. This is the story of a woman who left everything behind, not knowing what waited for her on the other side. And what she found was so much more than just a job. She found support, dignity, and love. You're about to see how a single moment of vulnerability can open doors to deep, unexpected change. Every choice, every sacrifice, every twist will touch your heart. Stick around till the end, because this story might just be the inspiration you needed today. And if powerful stories of second chances, empathy, and starting over speak to your soul, subscribe to our channel and come feel it with us. So let's begin. Grace never really had a choice. When Liam's father walked out before he was even born, she had to learn to be strong the hard way. She lived in a modest neighborhood where neighbors shared more than just thin walls. They shared silence, overdue bills, and broken promises. Grace did everything she could, cleaning houses by day, sewing clothes by night. Still, none of it ever felt like enough to give her son the future he deserved. And the hardest part? Every time she looked into Liam's big blue eyes, she wondered if she could really protect him from the same poverty that had shaped her. The overdue rent, an empty fridge, and a final notice to shut off the power, that was the last straw. That night, rocking Liam in her arms and hiding her tears from him, Grace saw a message that would change everything. An open position for an admin assistant in another city. A steady paycheck, benefits, and even support for single moms. It felt like a miracle, but it was real. And she had one shot. Grace spent the next few days filling out applications, selling whatever she could, even Liam's crib, and booking the cheapest flight she could find. It was going to be her first time on a plane, and even though she was scared, exhausted, and overwhelmed, she knew she had to try. Not for her. For him. In the early hours of departure day, Grace arrived at the airport with a backpack, a small suitcase, and her sleeping baby tucked into a sling against her chest. Every step felt like a mountain, finding the right gate, managing her anxiety, keeping Liam calm. But she kept going, because giving up just wasn't an option anymore. All she wanted was for someone, somewhere, to understand how much this was costing her. The moment the plane took off, the crying began. Liam squirmed in her arms, panicked by the noise, the lights, the closed space. Grace tried everything, gentle songs, rocking him, offering a bottle. Nothing worked. She could feel the stares, the unspoken judgment, the quiet sighs and whispers. And then, with tears welling up, she turned to the man beside her, a total stranger, and whispered, "Would you mind holding him for just a minute?" He paused just a second, then gave her a warm smile. He was dressed in a smart blazer, carried himself with quiet confidence, and had a calming, open energy. "Of course, I've got him." And the moment he took Liam into his arms, something incredible happened. The baby stopped crying. Gradually, with a few funny faces and soft giggles, Liam even began to smile. Grace didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She felt a flood of relief, shame, and gratitude all at once. So overwhelming, she couldn't move. "You're good with kids," she said, still surprised by how peaceful everything had become. He shrugged with a soft smile. Maybe he just needed someone new to play with. And in that moment, quiet, gentle, unassuming, something shifted. It wasn't just about surviving the flight anymore. It was like that brief connection carved out a little safe space in the chaos, a space where Grace could finally breathe again. The rest of the flight passed peacefully. Liam fell asleep in the stranger's arms while Grace straightened up her bags and whatever was left of her pride. When the plane landed, she thanked him sincerely, never imagining that this same man, who shared a single desperate moment with her, would soon appear in her life again, in a way she never could have predicted. Grace wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads at first glance. Her hair was always pulled into a messy bun, dark circles quietly tucked under her eyes, clothes simple but clean. What stood out was the quiet strength in her gaze, the kind you only earn after falling and getting back up more times than you can count. At 28, she felt older on the inside than she looked on the outside. But behind the plain appearance was a story written in abandonment, grit, and a fierce love for a tiny human who had turned her whole world upside down. She got pregnant at 26, completely alone. Liam's father vanished the moment he found out. Grace tried to hold it together, but the world always seemed to look the other way when she needed help the most. She lost her job at an accounting firm because she couldn't hide the constant nausea. She moved back in with her mom for a while, but the environment was toxic, full of judgment, resentment, and old wounds that never really healed. When Liam was born, Grace knew one thing for sure. From now on, she could only count on herself. The first few months were brutal. Sleep was a luxury. Nights turned into a blur of diapers, colic, and fear. Fear of failing. Fear of not being enough. She'd scroll through social media, seeing other moms with their picture-perfect routines and smiling babies, and wonder what she was doing wrong. But no matter how bad the night got, no matter how hard the exhaustion hit, she never stopped singing softly to Liam. She always whispered, "Mommy's here, sweetheart. It's going to be okay." Going back to work felt impossible. No one wanted to hire a single mom with no childcare. Public daycares had endless wait lists. Private ones, way out of reach. Grace tried everything, selling baked goods, taking odd jobs, even hourly cleaning gigs, always with Liam in tow, in the stroller in her arms wherever she could bring him. People would say, "That kid needs a routine," but she kept going, because she had no other option. Over time, she learned how to do more with less. She tracked every penny, stretched meals with whatever was in the kitchen, learned cheap recipes, and mended her own clothes. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Still, every single day, she'd look at Liam and say with all the conviction she had, "You're going to have a better life than mine." That promise, that was what kept her going. What made her special wasn't what she had. It was what she carried inside. A raw kind of strength wrapped in tenderness. A softness that refused to harden, no matter how cold the world got. Grace had a way of seeing beauty in the tiniest wins. Liam's first smile, sunlight after days of rain, a stranger's kind gesture. And even if no one ever clapped for her victories, she kept going. Because deep down, she still believed something good was out there. She dreamed of going back to school, getting certified, proving that women like her didn't have to stay invisible. She was good with numbers, she knew that, but no one seemed to notice. All she needed was a real shot. A fair shot, and that hope is what pushed her to accept the job in that new city, even scared, even unsure of what was waiting on the other side. Because something inside her just kept saying, "Go." And while she held Liam in her arms on that plane, trying her best to stay calm, she had no idea that she was about to find more than just a job. She was about to cross paths with someone who would change everything, someone who would see in her what the rest of the world had missed. Arriving in the new city was anything but easy. Even with the job offer in hand, the reality hit hard. She didn't know a soul. Everything felt foreign, distant. The small studio apartment she found was in a noisy part of town, with steep stairs and no elevator. Carrying groceries and Liam up to the third floor felt like a daily endurance test. Each bag felt twice as heavy, each step a test of her strength and her faith. The daycare she was promised? Still in final stages of approval, they said. So she improvised. She brought Liam with her to work the first few days, drawing awkward glances and quiet judgment. She tried to stay focused, helpful, even go above and beyond. But the baby's presence made people uncomfortable. One co-worker even joked, "This is an office, not a nursery." She pretended not to hear, but later that morning she cried alone in the bathroom. Money was still tight. Even with a better paycheck, expenses piled up fast. Security deposit, basic groceries, diapers, medicine for the cold Liam caught on their second day in town. At night, she'd sit on the mattress with a worn-out notebook, scribbling numbers, and praying nothing unexpected came up. But something always did. The emotional toll was just as brutal. Grace missed her old neighborhood. It wasn't perfect, but at least she recognized the faces. Here, everything felt sterile, mechanical. People rushed past each other like ghosts, and that only deepened her loneliness. Sometimes she wondered if she'd made the right choice. Was trading one kind of hell for another really worth it? Even Liam started to show signs. He slept less. The colic returned. Grace spent hours soothing him. And when he finally fell asleep, she would collapse and cry in silence. She tried calling her mom, but every call ended in criticism and blame. "You always dream too big," the voice would say on the other end. She'd hang up with that same bitter taste in her mouth every time. At work, the judgment got quieter but sharper. Microaggressions, side eyes. Opportunities passed over because you already have enough on your plate with the baby. She kept it all in, swallowing frustration like medicine. But bit by bit, it chipped away at her. Even on her best days, it felt like she was never quite enough. Then Liam spiked a high fever. Grace had to miss an entire day to care for him, and no one offered to cover for her. When she returned, the guilt hit hard, as if being a mother was something to be ashamed of. That day, she wanted to give up, but she didn't, because even in the dark, Grace still carried the tiniest spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, a door would open. And as it turns out, a door was about to open. One she never saw coming. From the last person she expected to see again. That kind stranger from the flight. The one who held Liam and made him stop crying. He was closer than she ever imagined. And he was about to walk back into her life with an offer that would change everything. After a few weeks at the company, Grace realized she couldn't just survive. She had to grow. So she started studying at night once Liam was asleep. She borrowed books from the city library and watched YouTube videos on business and Excel. Earbuds in, volume low, using a phone with a cracked screen and a charger that barely held. It was like she was stitching together a new version of herself using whatever thread she could find. One night, completely exhausted, she found herself scribbling down ideas to improve her team's workflow. She put together a simple spreadsheet with suggestions and brought it to her supervisor the next day. The woman barely glanced at it. "That's not your role. Just focus on what you're assigned." Grace smiled politely, said thank you, and walked back to her desk. But inside, something broke and something lit up. For the first time, she realized she'd have to prove her worth twice as hard. And she was willing to do it. In the middle of everything, she tried enrolling Liam in a low-cost daycare farther away. She stood in line from before sunrise, arms aching, baby on her hip, papers in hand. When it was finally her turn, the answer was cold. "Sorry, all spots are already filled." It felt like the city was closed off to her. Still, she went home determined to try again the next day, and the next, and the next. Grace started volunteering for extra tasks outside her job description. She stayed late, organized files, answered phones, just trying to be seen. Not just as a single mom, but as someone with real potential. And then one afternoon, while walking down the hallway, she crossed paths with the man from the flight. He was on the phone, moving quickly. Her stomach flipped, but she didn't say anything, and neither did he. He kept walking, never even noticing her. That moment left a tight ache in her chest. Did he remember her? Remember Liam? That flight? But before she could get lost in what-ifs, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of something she'd learned the hard way. You can't expect the world to recognize your struggle. Sometimes you just keep going, even when no one sees you. So she did. That same week, Liam got sick again. High fever, sleepless nights, ER visits. Grace showed up late 2 days in a row. Her supervisor pulled her aside, cold and sharp. "You Need to separate your personal life from your work, Grace. She swallowed the tears, apologized, and promised to do better. But inside, she felt like she was walking a tightrope, and every misstep could send everything crashing down. Still, she kept pushing. She signed up for free online training courses despite having zero time. She watched videos while folding laundry, listened to lessons while rocking Liam to sleep. She sent out resumes for better positions within the company, even applied for an internal promotion. But she didn't make it past the first round. Not the right fit, they said. It felt like falling every time she tried to run, but she refused to stop walking. And then, during one of those ordinary days, while she was typing up a report in the shared workspace, Liam napping beside her on a folded blanket, Nathan Brooks walked in. He looked at her, then at the baby, then back again. His expression changed. A flash of recognition, followed by a pause. "You," he said, almost out of breath. And in that second, Grace knew. Something big was about to shift. That look in Nathan's eyes wasn't just surprise. There was something else. Something soft, almost emotional. "You're from the flight, right?" he said. Grace nodded, unsure of what to say. "I remember Liam," he added, kneeling slightly to gently touch the baby's hand. Liam stirred, then smiled sleepily. And that tiny gesture, someone remembering her child with affection, it lit something inside Grace she didn't even realize had gone dim. That same day, Nathan asked her to grab coffee at the company cafe. He wanted to know how she was settling in, how things were going with the baby. Grace was hesitant at first, but soon found herself opening up, talking about sleepless nights, daycare struggles, how she was trying to learn more. Nathan listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt once. At the end of it, he simply said, "You're stronger than you think." 2 days later, Grace got an email she never expected. The company had just approved a pilot program for full-time daycare assistants, starting with her. She could barely believe it. She went straight to Nathan's office, unsure if she was even allowed. He was standing by the window. "Was it you?" she asked. He smiled. "It was us. You made this happen." In that moment, she realized he didn't pity her. He respected her. Days passed, and Nathan started showing up more often on her floor. Sometimes it was just a wave. Other times he'd bring Liam little toys or leave her encouraging notes. For the tough days, "You are light." Small gestures, but they changed everything. Grace began to open up. First slowly, cautiously, then more freely. She told him about her past, her dreams, and somehow, Nathan made her feel like every word mattered. Liam adored him too. Every time he saw Nathan, his arms shot up and he'd squeal with excitement. Nathan would scoop him up, take him outside to catch some sun. "This kid's gonna be a CEO before he turns 3, he'd joke. Grace watched from a distance, her heart torn between deep gratitude and something else. Something she didn't know how to name yet. Their bond grew quietly, like planting something with no idea if it'll bloom, but watering it anyway. Nathan started recommending courses, even nudged her into an internal leadership program. "You've got the talent. You just need the space to show it." For the first time in a long time, Grace let herself dream, without feeling foolish, for it. One especially hard day, when Liam was sick and Grace was panicking because she couldn't leave work, Nathan showed up with a solution. He'd hired a trusted nurse to stay with Liam at the daycare until her shift ended. "You take care of so much," he told her. "Someone needs to take care of you too." And in that quiet, wordless moment, he carved out a place in her heart, permanent and true. For the first time, Grace felt truly seen, as a mom, a woman, a professional, and even though she didn't dare say it out loud, she knew what was growing between them was rare, something too beautiful to call coincidence. Everything finally seemed to be falling into place. Grace was growing at work, Liam had adapted to his new routine, and Nathan was becoming more and more present, offering a kind of care that felt like more than friendship. But the peace didn't last long. On a gray Monday morning, Grace was called into the executive office for a formal meeting. Her hands were already sweating before she even walked in. Something felt wrong. The message was blunt. Someone had reported her for allegedly receiving special treatment from Nathan. Whispers about an inappropriate relationship, claims that she was getting unfair advantages because of her connection to the boss. Grace felt the floor disappear beneath her. She denied everything firmly, but her voice shook. She left the room shattered. This wasn't just a job. It was her and Liam's future. Everything she had fought to build now felt like it was slipping away. When she confronted Nathan, he was visibly shaken. "I had no idea. But now that I do, I'll take care of it." He tried to reassure her, told her he believed in her, that no one would take away what she had earned. But Grace could barely breathe. The shame burned through her. Being seen as someone who'd gotten where she was out of pity, not merit, crushed her. Worse still, what if Liam ended up paying the price? That night, sleep didn't come. Liam rested peacefully beside her, but she stared at the ceiling like she was waiting for a sentence. She thought about quitting, running. Once again, she felt like an outsider in a space she'd tried so hard to belong to, and even with Nathan's support, something inside her shut down. The insecurities she thought she'd overcome came flooding back. The following days were rough. She pulled away, avoided Nathan, stopped replying to his messages. At work, she kept her head down, did only the bare minimum. The spark in her eyes was gone. Her coworkers noticed. Even Liam seemed more restless. It was like everything had reset back to day one. She began to wonder, would she always be judged for simply wanting a little more? Noticing the distance, Nathan asked to talk. "This wasn't your fault, Grace. You didn't do anything wrong." But she looked away. Maybe the mistake was thinking I could have something good without someone trying to take it from me. The words came out raw. He didn't push. He just said, "When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." That's when Grace realized how many old wounds she was still carrying. Years of being overlooked, underestimated, made invisible. She'd started believing she didn't deserve much, so when something real came along, all she could feel was doubt. The rumors weren't the breaking point. The breaking point was every memory of being discarded. And that, she had to face, alone. It was deep in that emotional pit that a quiet decision formed. She would not let other people's opinions destroy what she had built. Not this time. Not again. For the first time, not out of pride, but out of love for herself and her son. Grace chose to rise differently. The following week, she woke up changed, still afraid, but no longer frozen. She looked at Liam sleeping in his makeshift crib and whispered, "Mommy's not running anymore." She knew that moving forward meant no more hiding, no more shrinking. She'd have to look people in the eye and remind herself of who she was, not for them, for her, for the story she wanted to teach her son. Back at work, she walked in with her shoulders straight. She requested a meeting with HR. Calmly, without self-pity, she told her story, laid out the facts, shared her journey. Every goal hit, every metric, every class she took. She wasn't just another employee, she was a woman fighting every day to be seen. And for the first time, she felt truly heard. Not just heard, respected. She started investing even more in herself. Enrolled in a fully funded management certification course. At night, she studied with Liam beside her, coloring while she reviewed spreadsheets. They built a new rhythm together, one that felt lighter, more stable. Grace slowly reconnected with Nathan. He gave her space, and when he started showing up again, it wasn't to rescue her, it was to walk beside her. They began having lunch, together now and then. Conversations deepened. They shared shy laughter, comfortable silences. With Nathan, she didn't have to pretend. She could be soft without being seen as weak, strong without being intimidating. For the first time, a man looked at her and didn't just see the mom. He saw the woman. And through him, she started seeing herself again. Liam was thriving, healthy, joyful. He had a safe daycare, friends, a routine. Every time he saw Nathan, he lit up, ran to him with arms wide open. "Daddy Nathan!" he once shouted without thinking. Grace froze. Nathan just laughed, eyes misty. "Guess I just got promoted." She choked back the lump in her throat. Something cracked open inside her. In the best possible way, they were starting to feel like a family. Nathan began pushing her to dream even bigger. "Have you ever thought about leading your own department?" he asked one day. Grace laughed. "You do know I'm just an assistant, right?" He smiled. "You're only an assistant until someone gives you room to show who you really are." Those words echoed in her mind for days. Because for the first time, she didn't think it was impossible. She started seeing herself through a new lens. The woman who used to apologize for existing now spoke with quiet power. She shared ideas in meetings, she pitched improvements, people started trusting her. But more importantly, she started trusting herself. Not because anyone gave her permission, but because she finally recognized her own worth. And deep down, she knew there was still a long road ahead, but this time she wasn't walking it alone. She had her son, her reason. She had a job she was proud of. She had someone who truly believed in her. And most of all, she had a new version of herself being born, stronger, lighter, whole. Then everything shifted on a random afternoon. Grace was sorting documents when her phone rang. It was the hospital. Her hands went numb. Liam had been rushed in after a severe allergic reaction. A snack had been swapped at daycare by mistake. She dropped everything and ran. Every red light felt like an enemy. Every second a scream caught in her throat. When she arrived, Nathan was already in the waiting room. "They called me too. I'm here." They entered the children's unit together. Liam was stable, but pale, weak. Seeing his little arms covered in bandages, breathing slow, hit Grace like a freight train. She broke down. And in that cold hallway, forehead pressed against Nathan's shoulder, she sobbed like never before. No walls, no filters. Nathan stayed the entire time. He bought clothes, food, blankets, slept in the armchair beside Liam's bed. He didn't promise the world. He just showed up. And somehow, that was enough. For the first time, Grace let herself fully trust, not just the help, but the love. That's when she realized she loved him. But the twists weren't over. On day 3 of Liam's stay, Nathan got a call while speaking with doctors. It was urgent. The company was in legal trouble. An ex-partner had returned with forged documents trying to smear Nathan's reputation. He had to leave town immediately to fix it. He looked torn. Grace held his hand. "Go. We'll be here when you come back." The case exploded. News outlets reported it. Rumors swirled, accusations flew, his name was under fire. Grace watched from afar, heart aching. She knew his integrity. But the world didn't care about truth, it cared about spectacle. And this could cost him everything. Then one day, Nathan came back. Thinner, exhausted. But the first place he went was Grace's apartment. He brought Liam a new teddy bear and tears in his eyes. He sat on the couch in silence, then said, voice trembling, "I've never needed anyone like I needed you two these past few days." She hugged him. No rush, no conditions. Because sometimes just being there is enough to heal. And then, the final blow. In the middle of all the chaos, Nathan found a buried clause in the company's charter. If the case wasn't resolved by month's end, he'd lose his CEO title. He looked at Grace and said, "If that happens, I'll leave the city. Start over." And she, heart-pounding, replied, "You don't have to start over alone." In that moment, they both knew. What they had built wasn't just circumstance. It was real. It was rooted. Time was against them now. The future was uncertain. But this time, Grace was ready to fight. Not just to survive, but for love. The deadline crept closer like a cruel ticking clock. Each day without answers felt like another nail in the coffin of Nathan's presidency. The company was split. The board was under pressure. The rumors wouldn't stop. Nathan shut down. He skipped meetings, refused interviews. Grace watched, from afar, feeling his pain like it was her own. She knew how hard he had worked to build it all, and how close he was to losing everything. One night she couldn't take it anymore. She climbed to the company rooftop where he often went to be alone. She found him sitting on the ground, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. "You're allowed to fall, Nathan. Just not alone." He looked up, eyes red. "What if this is it? What if I lose everything?" She knelt in front of him, cupped his face, and said firmly, "Then we start over, together." That night, for the first time, Nathan broke down. He spoke about his past, the mistakes, the guilt, the fear that he wasn't enough. Not just as a CEO, but as a man, as a partner, as a role model for Liam. Grace listened in silence, and when he finished, she said, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing." And something in him shifted. The next day, Nathan returned to the company, not to save his title, but to stand tall. He held a press conference, owned his choices, presented evidence proving his integrity, and made it clear, if he had to walk away, he'd do it with his head held high. His words moved people, not just inside the company, but across the community. For the first time, Nathan didn't sound like a distant CEO. He was just a man trying to do the right thing. The board, impacted by his transparency and the wave of public support, reversed their decision. Nathan would keep his position. But, under new oversight, he accepted it humbly. It was no longer about power. It was about purpose. Once things settled, he went to find Grace. "I get to stay, but I don't want to move forward unless it's with you and Liam." Tears welled in her eyes. "We never wanted just stability. We wanted to belong." The most symbolic moment came at a company event where Nathan publicly honored Grace. He told everyone how she changed his life, how her small act of kindness on a flight, a simple request for help, set off a transformation he didn't even know he needed. Grace, overwhelmed, didn't know where to put her hands, but in that moment she wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, recognized, celebrated. After the event, Nathan led her to the rooftop again. There, with the city lights glowing beneath them, he knelt down. Not with a ring, but with a question. "Do you want to build a life with me? Your way, your pace?" Grace smiled, cupping his face. "Yes, but only if you promise to remind me who I am when I forget." He nodded. And right there, among the concrete and chaos, a new kind of love was born. Deeper, more grounded, real. That weekend, the three of them, Nathan, Grace, and Liam, walked hand in hand through a quiet park. It looked like any other park, but to them, it was sacred. It was the starting point of a life that hadn't begun perfect, but had begun with courage. And courage, they now knew, was enough to build anything. Over time, life found its new rhythm. Grace no longer woke up afraid of the future. She woke up with purpose. She had a stable job, led larger projects, and was now seen not just as an assistant, but as a visionary, a leader, someone who mattered. She was respected, and that was priceless. It was like she was finally living the version of her life she once only dared to dream about. Nathan stayed by her side through every step of the change, not to take over, but to stand beside her. He understood her path didn't need his shadow. It needed shared light. And together, they built something that went far beyond love. It was mutual respect, daily care, and conscious choice. They talked about the future more naturally now, not like a fantasy, but like something real, something they were building, brick by brick. Liam grew up surrounded by love and stability, a home full of warmth, books, bedtime stories, and morning giggles. He called Nathan his favorite giant and ran to him with the same excitement he ran to his mom. And Grace, watching the two of them, felt a kind of happiness that healed old wounds. Sometimes she'd just sit quietly and smile, because deep down she knew she had made it. Grace also went back to school. Thanks to a scholarship Nathan helped arrange, she enrolled in a business management program. It was demanding, but she loved it. It challenged her. But this time, she wasn't alone. And that made all the difference. Each certificate, each passing grade, was a quiet answer to everyone who had ever doubted her. Yes, there were still hard nights. Liam got sick again. The routine was heavy. And sometimes, she missed the version of herself that existed solely for her son. But she didn't drown in it. She'd learned that growth hurts too. And that happiness doesn't mean you never fall. It means you rise with a little more grace each time. And with Nathan by her side, everything became a little simpler, a little softer, a lot more beautiful. 1 year later, Grace got promoted. She now led a small department mentoring new employees. When she received her new badge, she went straight to Nathan's office. Not to say thank you, but to share the victory. "You knew all along I'd get here, didn't you?" He smiled. "I just knew you had something the world needed to see, and that with or without me, you'd make it." They didn't talk about marriage much. They both had scars still healing. But the love was there, steady, rooted, real. They were already making plans, weekend trips, family Sundays. Sometimes they'd sit on the couch and rewatch videos from that first flight, the day it all began. They'd laugh, cry, and silently thank fate for that moment of chaos that brought them together. Grace now knew who she was, knew what she deserved, and the most beautiful part? She didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. She had won the greatest battle of all, the one to stay true to herself. And in the end, that's what made room for love to walk in. Not as a rescue, but as the reward for everything she had the courage to build. Do you remember the desperate mom on a plane, holding a crying baby asking a stranger for help? That was her. That was Grace. But now, when she looks back, she doesn't see shame. She sees bravery. She sees the exact moment her life began to change. Because sometimes the first step to transforming everything is admitting you can't do it all alone. And that's okay, because when you ask for help, the right help finds you. Throughout this journey, Grace faced judgment, slammed doors, sleepless nights, and endless days, but she never gave up. Not out of stubbornness, but out of love. For Liam, for herself, and for a future she didn't even know she deserved. She turned pain into strength, loneliness into wisdom, and doubt into faith. She rebuilt her story, one act at a time, one day at a time. Nathan entered her life as a kind stranger, and stayed as a full partner, willing to walk beside her, listen, and care. Not as a hero, but as a man who understood that to love is to walk side by side. And maybe that's the secret of stories that really touch the heart. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be true. Today, Grace still faces challenges. She still feels fear. But now she knows. You can be strong even with trembling hands. You can be loved even with a heart full of scars. You can begin again, even when everything feels lost. Because new beginnings don't come from luck, they come from courage. So if stories like this touch your heart, if you believe in the power of second chances, resilience, and quiet courage, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that there is still hope. Have you ever helped someone like that? Or been helped just when you needed it most? Drop your story in the comments below. I want to hear it. And until next time, because in the next video, a whole new life begins again.